today's overstimulated world, companies are seeking ways to stand out in the clutter of everything else. Awakening our senses through multi-sensory marketing is one way to resonate at levels marketers haven't fully explored. We have the ability to enhance experiences and engage memories that trigger emotions and build lasting relationships. Our brains come alive when our senses are activated. One of the easiest ways to light up our brains is through music and sound. When we experience music, we are processing sound in addition to engaging regions of our brains associated with movement, attention, planning, and memory. Music in our brain transforms us, changing our brain chemistry and how we feel at that moment. It connects us to memories and connects us to others. Despite our differences, listening to music unites us through a common experience. Musicians share their emotional state through vibration and rhythm, transferring it to their listeners. Though there are similarities in how our brains experience music, our unique personalities and histories ultimately shape how each song or sound impacts us. When we combine music or sound with powerful visuals, we can create even more impactful experiences. We can take our audiences to places they have experienced before or transform them to places they dream of going. By enhancing their imaginations, we can activate their brains and change their moods. We can create spaces that provide calm in the hectic day or add excitement to their boring night. Adding audio to our visuals ensures the mood we are creating is experienced the way it was designed and not left to the individual's imagination or to the viewer's own experience or memories. The combination of audio and visual is even stronger with the addition of scent. Smell is the most powerful sense of all because scent goes directly to the regions of the brain associated with memory and emotions. We are more likely to remember something we smell than something we see, hear, or touch. Companies who activate 3 or more senses are creating immersive experiences where customers are the most likely to come back. Our goal is to make more enjoyable experiences and to elevate the mood of our customers. Happy customers stay longer and buy more. It is that simple. Activate our senses and take us to a familiar place or even a new place. Happy brains are worth the investment. Are you ready?
Morning. Oh, wait a minute. We're at one of the most exciting places on the planet right now. Let's try that again. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, much better, much better. Now I know that I'm amongst happy brains out here in the audience. Welcome to our session today on activating our senses and how music and digital engagement light up our brains. How many of you happened to see the picture I posted on the ICX Summit app last night? Did anyone see the picture? A few of you saw the picture. Those of you who have not seen the picture yet, at some point today, go up and take a look at what a happy brain looks like. We used David in the lab last night.
It might or might not have a slide with that.
Yeah, that's true. I just might have to show you that slide.
What you should know is that when they pulled the cap off the head of my head yesterday, all my hair stuck on the which really pissed me off. Right? I thought, donation to science is one thing, but my hair.
I know, but it was so cute. You're just going to have to see it. It was exciting. My name is Roberta Perry, and it's my pleasure to be your moderator this morning. Last year here at ICX, we did another panel about neuroscience and customer experience. And I remember after that panel, and later on, Michelle and I were talking about what if we could actually measure some of the things that we talk about when we're all creating customer experiences. So we thought, well, let's test in Michelle Adams' lab some of the ideas that we had about music. And all of us have ideas. We have our intuition. Most of us in this room, because if you're like I am, we've got 25, 30 years of experience in this world of creating customer and guest experiences. So how does our guests and our customers actually react to what it is that we're giving them? And we used to do that by intuition and experience, knowing that. Now we have some initial measurement. So after last year, 4 companies came together. We have the Marriott organization here with David Kepron. We have, of course, Dr. Michelle Adams. It's her lab where we tested David last night, which was so cool. And we have Tamara Dike with Image Sound, and myself, of course, with Fresh Juice Global. We came together to literally test the impact of music, visuals, and scent with the brain. How do our customers react to those 3 things? Now, know that Michelle just finished the research last week. So what you're seeing for the very, very first time. You're, in fact, our first audience where we're going to release some of this data. Now, understand that there is so much data that today, within the hour we're going to give you the Cliff Note version. It's just the tip of the iceberg. The way we're going to work the panel today is we're going to tell the story of the research and what we found. We're going to do it in 4 chapters. One will be music. The first one Michelle will be doing is on the overview of what occurred, how the methodology. Second chapter, Tamara is going to take it on about the music. I will follow with chapter 3 on the visual impact to the brain. And then we've asked David to do chapter 4, which is really wrapping it all up. What does it mean to us out there who are creating customer experiences? So with that, I want to first introduce, and it's just exciting because every time I see the research that you did, Michelle, I am so excited about watching these brains dance. Please welcome Dr. Michelle Adams to the lectern to give us an overview of the research that was just completed.
Thank you so much. What is so exciting is that we did, and we continue to do. So every week we're doing another experiment, and we're looking at things, and we're iteratively learning. The company that I formed 5 years ago is called Marketing Brainology. Previous to that, my experience came from PepsiCo. I ran shopper insights and customer strategy across the PepsiCo family, running a neurolab, 4 neurolabs in fact, and I believe Frito-Lay was the first to ever introduce this to the extent that we did, the neuroscience to CPG, and it's been an exciting ride since then. So lots of excitement now around neuromarketing, neuroscience. Those are hopefully 2 words that you hear more of. Neuromarketing is precisely about connecting what resonates with our brains to the people and understanding that not all brains are the same. And that's the number one finding that as we go through this that I want to make sure we take away is that we're uniquely formed. And our center of our universe and our brains is ourself and our experiences and our history and things that make us tick. And that becomes our universal finding across studies. So let me take you through the slides. I want to think about an analogy. Analogies are quick ways, as symbols are and videos are, for us to remember things. So in a marriage, we come together because we're attracted to somebody. So think about a marriage proposition or a favorite girlfriend or boyfriend that you had. You were attracted initially probably off of physical, just the same way we are to brands in a store or things in a store. You come together because there is something about that person that is something that you value. It might be physical attraction, it might be their intelligence, it might be something they're interested in, maybe they both of you love music, so you come together. That is really how our customers and our consumers are attracted to us as retailers and as brands. So think of the marriage coming together, that union. But we like that analogy also as we talk about the uniting of 2 brilliant souls coming together, music and visuals. And the reason why I really want to emphasize that is so much of the visual, digital content that's out there is without sound. For a variety of reasons, you guys already know that. But without the music, the brain does not respond the same way. So we did an experiment of just music for 15 minutes. So let me take you through the experiment. So my chapter is If You Feel It, Can We Measure It? And it's absolutely true. The lab that actually the team visited last night is called it's the Vault of Human Understanding. It's based in Plano, Texas. But our methodology and our approach can be set up anywhere Our technology travels with us. You see 2 versions of our EEG equipment right here on stage. One we use with women and one we use with men. We did leave David's hair intact, so don't let that scare you.
On the sculpture, yes.
And the vault of human understanding is kind of priceless to us because we are actually residing in a bank vault of a building in a medical facility in Plano. And so in that bank vault is very precious things called, remember the, what were they called? Those security boxes, those safety deposit boxes? Anybody remember those? And you had a key? So our job with this kind of science is to unlock our brains, to unlock those untapped memories, those experiences, like it said in the video, memories of scent that we don't even know our brains are making those synapses, those connections, but they are. Everything goes back to our world and everything that we're about, all those experiences. So the methodology that we use, and sometimes we use just eye tracking, which you heard about yesterday. Home Depot uses the eye tracking in store. That is a very, very great way to collect information on what people see. Obviously, if they don't see it, their brain isn't responding to it. So that's a very, very important methodology that we use in all our studies. We used it in this study with the Tobii eyeglasses. We use EEG, and in this study, we use 15 minutes of music, a reel that Tamara and her company put together of different kinds of music. We let them hear it for 45 seconds with 2 seconds in between, and then they went on to another another song. They were in a very comfy room, which David can attest. I think he had a Zen moment in our comfy room. In the lab, we have a viewing. You know how those focus groups have those mirrored windows? Well, we were able to watch him through our mirrored window, and instead of him being in a focus group, he was in a neuroscience project. So we could tell if he was having a thought bubble. I mean, don't let that scare you, David.
I had none.
What was really amazing about David is he meditates, and mindful meditation you might have heard something about. He had very, very honed ability to calm his brain down, and that showed up in his data. We're not going to share his data today. If we had done it after the cocktail hour, that would have been even more interesting. But we use the EEG. It's 16 sensors. We can get somebody hooked up and get readable numbers in about 5 minutes. The women take a little bit longer. We use this technology here because the women are more difficult with their thick hair, if they have especially long, thick hair. And then we do something that none of the players in our space in the neuroscience place. When I was at Frito-Lay, one of the things in PepsiCo frustrated me about this methodology was they never asked people what they were experiencing or what they thought. So it was stated research sat on this side of the research spectrum, and then you had non-conscious research in the neuroscience. And you just got to either see their brain or you got to hear what they said. We married the two. Again, that marriage analogy of they come out of the non-conscious into a video, what we call an in-depth interview, and we capture what they were remembering. What was that experience like? What did they recall? And that becomes very important. So we're going to show you a piece of that. So this would be the picture that Brenda works in the lab. She's a background in neuromarketing, neuroscience. We see some of these folks. There's a conference called the Shopper Brain. Ed King has spoken at it. Raise your hand if you've been part of a neuroscience conference as a speaker. So there's a few folks in this room that understand what this is about and the growth of it in the United States. It's definitely very strong across the globe.
The best selfie ever.
The best selfie ever is what you're seeing. So
I'm now open for any available positions at your company.
We took it upon ourselves to interview in this methodology, bring 45 different folks into the lab. We had our youngest as an 8-year-old girl. Our oldest was a 77-year-old male who had early onset Alzheimer's, because music and Alzheimer's, you might have heard, is a way to bring their brains back. This is the start of what will become a bigger project where we'll begin to go after more and more target populations. We have a significant read. In a study like this, you only need 24. You need 12 men, 12 women. For the eye tracking, you need 30, 15 and 15. We wanted to go deeper across populations because the music that we had was for different generations. So what I need to show you now before I exit and we go into some of the results is this right here. I'm going to give you a very quick overview because you're going to see these 4 brains show up on the slides and some of the videos as feedback. So there's basically 4 waves that come out of the 16 sensors that we're measuring. The one on the top left is the delta. The delta is basically memory consolidation. And we see that activate almost on everybody, unless they're in a Zen moment, then we see nothing. So if they close their eyes and they're having a Zen moment, there is no activation on any of these waves that I'm showing you. It will be completely green, or if they're sleeping, it will go to blue. We were interviewing a lot of 18-year-olds, 16 to 18-year-olds, boys and girls that were going through final week because the data, and they had stayed up late, so their brains were really sleepy when they were listening to the music, which is kind of fun. Not everybody, but a few. We see alpha. Alpha is the one to look for when motion happens, when music happens. This brain at the top is the frontal lobe, so each of those 4 waves, what you want to look at is the the frontal lobe activation. If we see O1, O2 at the bottom of each of those brains, that's usually when they're making a choice to buy or they're trying to think about something, they're having a recall moment of memory. If their eyes are open, we can see their theta. So we told them to close their eyes, but if they open their eyes, their theta will be activated unless, and we use a webcam to look at what they're doing, and we have a camera over their shoulder as they're going through the experiment. So we can see what's going on, but we can also see in their data. If they're visualizing something, a music video, a moment that they've had an experience with that music, their theta or their beta will become active. So that's what you need to know. Cliff Note version. Let me take you through an example of what this data looks like when we see it as we go to the chapters. All right, Tamara.
Thank you, Michelle. You know, when we first started talking about doing this, I got super excited because in my role working with brands, I am constantly asked the same question: how can you really prove that good music is going to make an impact on my hotel guest or on my customer experience in a retail environment? And the truth is, it's usually from my gut. It's hard to prove, it's hard to explain. And so getting involved in a research study like this got me very excited because I think what we have really achieved is a better understanding of how people actually hear music. As you probably know, and Michelle sort of touched on, you know, music releases dopamine in the frontal lobe. So it's the same thing that's activated by, you know, gambling, sex, love, even coffee. It's a mood enhancer, and it triggers, you know, region in the brain that's connected to attention and planning, and of course the big one, which is memory. And the best part, as we saw yesterday when David stepped into the study, is that it's instant. Although for David, it was a little bit slow because, as Michelle mentioned, he's really good at relaxing, so his, you know, base level was down here, so he had to bring himself up. But it was really interesting to watch that. For me, again, talking Cliff Notes, one of the major takeaways from this study that really resonated with me is that it is not as simple as saying, our customers are baby boomers, so let's play Beatles and Beach Boys. There, that'll be it. That's all we need. It's not that simple. The right music for a retail experience just can't be that narrow an approach. And the reason is because it's not one size fits all. It's truly about our reaction to a song, a vocal, a chord. We're all unique and complex, you know, and our participants, as Michelle mentioned, they range in age from 8 all the way through to 77. Imagine the range of experiences that those people have, you know, encountered in their years. You know, I mean, for me, I grew up in the 80s, and the Doobie Brothers, let me tell you, my dad used to crank that in the Camaro. And now every time the Doobie Brothers comes on, that's all I can think about are the leather bucket seats, the wind blowing through my hair, driving way too fast with kids in the back. You know, but that's my memory, right? And you may not expect me to be into the Doobie Brothers, but I absolutely am. Maybe it's a song that you love because you went to a concert. Maybe it's a track that you love to sing when you do karaoke. Maybe you played piano, and every time you hear keys in a song, it reminds you of that action. And so suddenly, you're playing piano and not even realizing it with your fingers as you're walking through the grocery store. It's those sort of components that, come into our world. They change our experiences, and therefore our lens is forever changed. Another major takeaway for me about the research was about new songs. We watched David even last night. It was so interesting to see. There were tracks that he'd never heard before, for sure, and those tracks started to light up his brain as he began to discover and listen and create new memories. So I found that to be very interesting as well. So two of the standout components from the various songs that we tested are rhythm. Our brains like repetition. They like to move, and they actually do move to the rhythm, to the syncopation based on the pattern or beat of a song. The second is vibration. And vibration, I mean positivity and warmth. So if the vibe is positive, your brain feels it. It feels happy. It feels safe. It feels good. It feels invited. And the other two things that were really important, the way that people hear music. So it's either linear in that they are thinking about the words, they recognize the name of an artist, they're anticipating the next moment of the song, and we actually saw the beat show up in the alpha wave. I mean, you can see the beat moving in your brain. It's amazing. And the other is emotional. So, they remember the first time that, they danced with a girl and kissed her. They remember graduating from high school and driving down Highway 1 with the top down listening to the Rolling Stones. They feel these emotions, and so the front part of the brain, the frontal lobe, lights up, and we see their delta and alpha waves actually change. So now we're going to try an audience experiment, right?
So we'd like you to close your eyes as we play this song, and I want you to experience it the way our respondents experienced it. So close your eyes. We'll know if you opened it. And now, there'd be a couple seconds between. Close your eyes again, and we're going to experience another song.
All the single ladies, 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 all the single ladies. Now put your hands up, up in the club, just up, I'm doing my own thing. Decided to dip you, knock you on the trip, but another brother noticed me.
Excellent. So, what did it make you feel? How's about that first song? Anybody? What did you feel when you closed your eyes? Anybody want to volunteer?
Romantic.
Okay. Anything else?
Relaxing.
Great. Were you imagining anything visual? Were you seeing anything?
Happy, sure.
Okay. Okay, excellent. Cool.
Did you know that first song?
Anybody know that first one? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Excellent. So, but we had some discovering happening, right? We had some change action in our brains. And so what about that second song? Anyone?
Joy. Timberlake 7 and 5.
Perfect.
So that's why I want to
That's amazing.
Where you heard it first?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Anybody remember a wedding? Been to a wedding lately? They like to play this at weddings, especially before they thread them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, I mean, I speak for myself, I'm thinking dance moves, I'm thinking I see the video, right? So it's interesting, right? And the new discovered music, undiscovered music, what we noticed was that, as I mentioned before, it started to light up the brain and create new memories. And then, the two basic reactions that we saw across our participants, because those were two songs from the actual study, was that the brain sort of mirrored the beat and created movement without physically moving. And then the other was that they sort of started to search the song and analyze it and sort of look for triggers or memories or cues, as in the Single Ladies track. Is there something else, Michelle? Yeah.
We're going to show you 2 examples of one's a 42-year-old and I think the other one's younger.
Doesn't wanna even cry. Tell the reason why. Don't wanna even cry. See the world, and I don't want it anymore. Oh baby, come on dance with me in the dance floor. Ooh. How do I mend a broken heart? My world has fallen.
So I'll add one thing, Lyle. What you said you experienced, that 72-year-old male was in the stated interview. He was romantically associating that music. All right, and now the second one.
Single ladies, now put your hands up. Up in the club, you just broke up. I'm doing my own little thing. You decided to dip, and now you want a trip. Cause another brother noticed me. I'm up on him, he up on me. Don't pay him any attention. Kept crying my tears, gave 3 good years. You can't be mad at me. Cause if you like it, then you should've put a ring.
Impressive.
Yeah, a couple facts about this. So even though that song seems really relevant to the younger population, was it relevant to the 16-year-old? The 42-year-old dances. She's a beautiful lady and she likes to dance. And she said in her interview that she was visualizing and dancing to that song. And the 72-year-old, I have no explanation.
He was just digging it.
So let's listen to though an 18-year-old male.
When I heard a familiar song, it was kind of hard to contain myself. I wanted to start singing and moving along, and then I really just start visualizing things. If I knew the artist also, I'd picture them doing it live or something. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Like you were almost at a concert listening to them.
Either that or kind of making a music video in my head. Yeah, probably The Rock, and I like the Single Ladies in there. That was kind of funny. But Rolling Stones song, I like that one a lot because I hear that played weekly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that was very familiar in your head.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Awesome. I think, looking at the brain data, looking at what he just said, I think really the point is that we can all probably now really agree on is that it is so, it's so unique. Each of us are different, and our relationship with music, therefore, is as well. And so, when it comes to the evolving retail landscape, music is just one of those, exciting and obvious ways that you can create emotional and deep impact with your guests if you do it right.
Thank you, Tamara. I was so excited when I looked at the brain activity when Tamara was going through it, as well as the last couple of days looking at it, because in my career, I started my life running 100 nightclubs. So watching this, I went, oh my goodness, if I'd had this ability back then, I think there possibly could have been more money to be made out of those nightclubs, but who knows. But when we got to chapter 3 that I'm going to just touch on, again, these are the cliff notes, if we see it, will we feel it? We know that intuitively. I'm involved in a project in Los Angeles where we're working with a company called Health Tunes via UCLA, looking at how does music impact people who are going through pain. And what we discovered experientially, but not through the lab yet, is that if people listen to a particular piece of music, usually Beethoven's seventh movement, or second movement, and I can get you that information you needed, there's a 20% reduction in pain medication. If we put music and visuals together, which I'm going to talk about the visuals here in a second, there is a 60% decrease in the pain medication. And watching what Michelle and all of the research she did with this, it came to light that, wow, music plus visuals together, that marriage really is impactful. Now, visuals have a powerful way of impacting us. Our study found two completely different experiences based on whether music or sounds were included or not. Telling a visual story can leave people craving more, as I think we all know. As they're exposed to elements of the story, they immediately try to recall similar experiences in their own lives. The visuals remind them of things important to them. Their brains immediately react in two ways. One is to cognition and memory recall, and one is to emotionally engage in the content. Bottom line, strong visuals make us want more. Michelle, why don't we go through the couple of examples that we have for everybody? And we're watching this without music. Go ahead and comment on it, Michelle.
Yeah, so what you need to know is the 12-year-old is a skateboarder. And skateboarding is very popular in this area. There's skateboard parks just like there are in LA. The 52-year-old's a cool, hip mom of two twins and an older child, but they don't skateboard. So a little less relevant, nothing going on there. Now let's tune it in with the watch that all the way through, we will see activation on mom. Mom activated, and we went back through our notes to say, okay, without the music, she was not activated, but the music did trigger eventually. And as again, skateboarding might not be relevant, but if you're a snowboarder or you ski, it becomes more relevant, or you like to be around the ocean. So people had their own stories about each one. This mom actually said she was visualizing that, the nature part of it. So she was focused on the scenery. Other moms said, I just hope they land those stunts. That's what I was thinking. And then the skateboarders or people that were into the active piece of it, were trying to figure it out. And so you saw the visualization that beta was happening with this guy.
Go ahead then, let's go on to the show, the outdoor scene.
Now this one was very interesting. Without music or sound, they were putting it into a place that they had been. One 42-year-old male said, I was imagining somebody popping out with a paintball. Because his experiences in this environment were to play paintball. Others said, I remember the beach vacation when I was a child, and or we hike. So as you see. Now listen to it yourself with sound. Now, one of the things that happened to the moms, busy moms, is they got to that scene, and I looked at the data all the way through. Their brains were very, very, very active with the other content. Yeah. They got to this, and it was like they're zen. So they found themselves having this moment, which is good, depending on what your goal is.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. Do we have another one on that?
I think then the next slide goes to chapter 4.
Okay, good. All right, well, let's just kind of bottom line it for what happened with that the study participants almost universally chose sound or music with the visuals, and that was what they preferred, totally. And this helped them focus on the visuals without having to create their own story. If it caught their attention, and it did catch their attention, it kept their attention. Now, for me, there were 4 takeaways from this particular part of the research. And again, remember, we're just beginning to look at this research. It's the tip of the iceberg, but there were 4 takeaways for me. 1, they could experience the visuals the way those visuals were created. So as you're creating visuals out there for the customer experience, know that your guests can definitely experience those visuals. Number 2, Target marketing becomes especially important for all our visual stories. You've got to be able to do that target marketing, which we all know intuitively, we all know by experience. We know we need to personalize and customize more to our particular audiences. And number 3, we found not everyone experiences the same story depending on age and personal interests. So again, it was fascinating. One person would see the visualization, they'd react differently than somebody else, and especially across different demographics. Now, and number 4, sound added to the visual created a complete story and ensured they completely were transported using the visual and the audio cues. They were fully immersed. We always talk about immersion. This was the first time I actually could see what immersion did to the person or with the person and how they reacted to that immersion. So it was great to be able to see how they reacted and what the impact was, and then notice the full experience. But again, this is the tip of the iceberg. What we know, importantly, is that it's the visual plus the audio or the music that goes with that, the audio or the sounds that go with it, that make the biggest impact on all the demographics that are taking a look at the information that we were giving them. Now, let's wrap this all up. What does this mean to all of us here in the room? And also, how do we apply this information that we're beginning to get to you? How do you apply it to when you're designing your guest experiences? Please welcome David Kepler. Absolutely.
I'm allergic to podiums. I think I should have been like an evangelist, church, minister or something at some point. I'm going to channel my inner Albert from the Home Depot yesterday, and I've never met some guy who's so enthusiastic. It's fabulous. All right, so I'm the so what guy. I think we spend a lot of time in this session talking about the value of music and visuals and how it influences our work, but I think one of the things I was talking about also yesterday in our session was the idea that I remember when I came into the retail world in the late 90s, or let's say mid 90s, and I was working with a guy, Joe Weishar, in New York, who was a visual merchandising pro, and I was the architect in the office, and we had 2 visual guys, and we were always trying to create experiences that triggered all of the senses. Even then, so we were talking about a brand for a beachwear company, and our job was to say, well, what if we made a boardwalk with sand? What if we had the smell of sea salt in the air? Wouldn't that just make it better? And we were pushing on this, 25 years ago. So this is not new, right? I said it yesterday, we're in the business of making experiences, and I've never had one retail client or one hotel owner say, let's make a really bad experience. I mean, this really and ironically, though, many retail experiences are really bad. They're confusing, they're frustrating, they're not really well organized. You can't see the assortment, you can't shop very well. The sales associates don't really know how to talk to you. And it can be better, right? It's our collective goal. So one thing about that. When I started doing the research for my book, Retail Revolution, a few years ago, I had already some background in psychology, which seemed to fit very good with architecture. But what I really began to discover in digging into not just the psychology of experience is that what the foundations of those psychological attributes to experience are the biological things that are happening in your brain. The things, the physiological changes or the biochemical interactions between cells are what give us the ability to do everything. And so it's not just about psychology, which is good, but what we have to be able to do is move from the psychology of understanding behavior to the neuroscience of behavior and understanding interpersonal neurobiology. Because I can tell you that your biology influences my biology. The way you look, feel, and behave directly influences the way that I behave, because we have these things called mirror neurons, which allow me to understand affect. The feeling that you have if you are bored or angry or happy. We've all been in the room when someone yawns, and likely there's a bunch of people who will yawn in concert right after that, or you'll feel really uptight if someone's anxious. And so you feel that. So we know that there's an interaction between the body and people. And so that's a trickle down to the associate level on the sales floor that says, hey, listen, you can't have disaffected sales associates who are trying to push your product or your brand message because it's a physical reaction on the other side. Now, we don't really, in the past, we on the retail side or even the hospitality space haven't been able to really quantify that in any appreciable way. As a designer, I was always sort of in that weird place where, well, how do you know for sure? Right? I mean, how can you tell? And I'd often rely on my sense of intuition, the fact that I'd been an architect for 30 years, and I'd say, well, because I kind of have a sense, it's an intuitive sense that people will feel this way, and they say, well, how do you know? It's just your opinion. And now what we know is because we have research people who are out there doing the research to say, no, it's not just my opinion that this will likely happen. What I know is based on research that I can guarantee with a whole lot of certainty that people will react a certain way. And in a way, it's a great validation for the things I already intuitively knew as a designer, but now I can substantiate with great science. And that's part of the value of doing this kind of research. I wanted to also try to bring up something really important. You know, the CPG world, consumer packaged goods, you were in that world for a long time, are way ahead of retailers and hospitality people in doing this kind of research. They have used for a long time this kind of information to be able to say, what is the color of a package? Where should it be on a shelf? How do I know that people are looking at it when they come and walk down an aisle? What do they see when it's adjacent to another piece of, marketing material? Do they read it? Do they actually, is there follow through? Is there a purchase based on that sign? We don't know. But the consumer package people have been way on this for a long time. Read Martin Lindstrom's book called Biology. It's one of those seminal books that gives you a good understanding of what this world is about and how you can use it to influence guest experience in stores. And oh, by the way, it's not a Machiavellian kind of idea, It's not that, we'll be able to get in there and control people's minds. Right, and we'll make them do things they don't want to do and buy the things they don't want to buy. And the reality is like I was saying yesterday, it's not that. It's really that if you understood a little bit about what goes on in people's heads, you might likely not spend all the money you do on R&D and getting something into the field and discovering, God, it's just not working the way we thought. And it's most likely because you didn't really fundamentally understand what's driving experience in the shopping aisle. And that's really important. Part of why this is important to do, or to keep on doing. Here's a really interesting thought, and this is, we were talking about this last night. We all think that the brain and the way we behave is a top-down kind of paradigm, right? The brain sends messages to everything else in the body, and that's the way you feel and do everything, and that's how you get, on in the world. What we often forget that our systems weren't built top down. Our systems were built bottom up. We were single cell organisms with single neural networks way before we were ever a spinal column and a brainstem leading to a developing brain. So what we have to understand is the brain doesn't start and only reside in your head. It is intricately tied into everything your body does. All of the sensory experiences you have come from your body and your body's interaction with the environment, not just that you have this cerebral cortex sitting up in a skull that's locked up there and making decisions like some train conductor in a station telling you what to do. That's not the way we work. So when you see or when you hear things that are physiological reactions to stimuli or environment, that is a body sense. You have brain cells in your heart and you have brain cells in your gut. So when we talk about heartfelt emotion or gut reactions to things, it is literally because your brain activity is starting there, not here. So trust, especially trust your gut. Trust your gut. Rely on intuition, because you'll be happy to see that when you do, you're not so far off and probably better off than if you had just made decisions based on logic and sort of great data alone. So trust your intuition and your body because it's connected to what you understand about the world. One of the interesting things that we didn't do in the study, which is look at the sense organs of sound. So we have areas of the brain that are related for hearing and seeing. Occipital lobe, someone said in the session yesterday, it's the occipital lobe which is responsible for sight. And I'd be interested to see next is skin. Your largest sense organ in your body is skin. This world of interactive digital media and buying through a computer interface or some digital screen that's got a pane of glass on it will fundamentally change when we understand that haptic technology, which you understand now because your phone vibrates when you get a tweet and you've turned off the buzzer or the ringer, or anything like that. Haptics is the idea that your sense organs of your hands will be able to understand the things that you see on the screen, because we have technology now that allows you to use the screen as a feeling interface, not just a visual interface. Look up haptics and you'll be fascinated with what's going on. So it'll be one more thing. There is a paradigm that says fire together, wire together in the brain. Those brain cells that continue to repeat activity over and over and over and over again are ones that will continue to drive your experience. One of the things that we saw in the music set, which was really interesting, was that novelty in music, like I was talking about yesterday as well, novelty is a key driver to memory activation and retention. If you can introduce novel experiences, I had never heard the music that Tamara played, but it seemed to be the only one of the other ones when I was in the Zen state saying that triggered activity in my brain because it was something I hadn't heard before. And so I was intrigued and began to go through a visualization process about what that was, which was really impossible not to do. So you can't avoid novelty, and when you introduce it, you maintain relation or memories longer, and you're able to introduce new learning into novel experiences more readily than you would if you were just giving people the same thing over and over and over again. The last couple of things I want to touch on. Scent, we talked about scent. Scent, as we know, who's bought or sold a house recently? Anyone? Right, so, if you're with your realtor, they'll say, bake an apple pie, or like make cookies or something, when you're doing your showings. Why? Because those kinds of scents activate long-term memories that have a whole host of emotional connections for you about what it means to be, young in your home and all those kinds of things. And so they like to get you in the happy place a whole lot quicker. One more thing that I want to try to touch on was the value of this research. The value of this research now that, for example, at the Marriott World and the relevancy going forward is that we're able to use neuroscience to really get us closer to what people are ultimately feeling. We're using augmented reality, virtual reality, we're using actual model rooms in our hotels, we're using hotel rooms that we've built out as in our basement, and all of those activities and putting people inside these environments, wiring them up and saying, we don't have to rely on guest satisfaction surveys anymore to give us the only data about whether or not someone actually enjoyed their stay. We can actually get them in a room and say, what are they really feeling? How are they really interacting on a brain level, and how can we use that information to make it better? I've now run out of time with one last thing. Confucius, there's a great, I love dragging up a guy who has, 500,000 years or 500 years ago said something important, and it was Confucius who said, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, and I do, and I understand. Each of those sensory experiences make memories more profound and activate you in a more profound way to engage in a brand story than if you just did one of them alone. So it's not just sight, it's not just sound, and it's not just feeling, it's all of those things combined together which are important. The last thing I wanted to say was, driving forward in this world is not about just understanding how technology on its own solves a problem or how you can use digital media to engage in a different way. It's about the combination of those two things in what I call technempathy. Talked about it yesterday. Technempathy is the use of technology in the service of empathic extension. So using this kind of technology, not because it's a way that we can manipulate people, but to get us closer to engaging in relevant ways with our guests that make meaningful and lasting brand relationships. Here I am.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Wow. I hope you're as excited about the tip of the iceberg as I know we all are, and great overview, great, absolutely excellent for the finishing, and Tamara, music spot on. We have time for 2 or 3 questions. Are there any questions? I know you probably all have a lot of questions, starting, and this gentleman right here. If you would just introduce yourself, sir. That'd be great. Thank you for standing up.
My name is Stuart.
Testing.
Oh, there we go. Hello.
Thank you, David.
Stuart Armstrong. I work for a company called Compke. Great job. The implications of this are tremendous. The application of it today is very difficult. So one of the things that when we're creating shopper experiences or staff experiences for our clients, one of the areas that's often discussed is video analytics and how it could apply. There's a number of different use cases. You've just made me think of another one, which is based upon the demographic of the shopper at that time, how can we change the audio and the music to be able to stimulate memories, to be able to stimulate behaviors, desired behaviors. So what sort of mapping is going on? It occurs to me that companies like Spotify and Pandora are in a great position to be able to start to line up and map demographics with audio preferences, and then taking that a step further with some of the research you guys do and be able to extend that. So you have a map to be able to do event triggers with the digital signage system, with the audio system within the store. What do you think of that idea? Is that something that's that you see on the horizon, or are you moving in that direction?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
That's great, Stu. It is about relevancy at the right time. And one of the examples that I'm going to have Roberta describe is a retail experience where they did exactly that.
Exactly. Well, I think I can do it. If everybody can hear me, I'll just give that to David. Where my offices are in El Segundo, California, I've had the opportunity to watch Rite Aid is redoing their stores, their flagship stores. And the one in El Segundo, they redid all of the speakers to go to a Bose speaker, to take that part of the hardware up. But then they started looking at the demographics of the area and when people started arriving, and then match the music. And again, as we talked about, it's still kind of the mass music, but they started matching it to the demographics. And I found myself actually now visiting the store at 1 o'clock. When I need to go to the Rite Aid, I'll go at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because I know they're going to play classic rock. And I'll go in and there's Bruce Springsteen hearing and the music, the level's up, and I'm like, all right, this is my kind of store. And I find by my own research that I spend more time in the store walking the aisles just so I can listen to this great music for that moment in time. And it's brilliant the way, now that's one store within that chain. What they're doing the rest of the time, I'm not quite sure of yet, but go ahead.
Just to build on that, we've been doing granular level planograms on shelf sets for decades. I mean, the big brands know exactly where to put their products and how to the adjacency and which flavors to use in which location. It's the same. It's the same. It takes some analytics, though. It's going to take some understanding. So not only understanding the demographics at that time and that date, but also what is it that you're trying to create? What kind of experience?
I have a follow-up question. That is, at home, Michelle, when you want to have behavior from your husband and your do you know what music?
I am so glad, Stu, you brought that up.
That's a different seminar altogether.
I actually have the advantage of testing we have 3 sons and my husband, and he is back there.
Right
and
in the back
I tested the 15 minutes on his brain as a pilot, and he did not react at all. And I think he loves music. So then I took his playlist. I did this with several of the respondents. I took their playlists off of their phones and started the experiment over, and he loves the Rippingtons. I won't explain why, but he loves the Rippingtons. And it showed on his brain.
Yeah. Michelle, let's go ahead. I know there's another question. There was a, yes, sir. Right there. I'm sorry. There you are.
I'm Shelley, and I'm with Halls in Kansas City. It's a premium department store.
Right.
About creating the customer experience. So I don't know which is more clear. Do you try to create music that is more familiar and upbeat that generates activity, or do you try to play music that is more zen so that they're creating more memories in your environment?
Excellent question. Tamara, why don't we start with you on that one?
Good question. When I'm working with a brand, the very first part of the conversation has got to be kind of a come to Jesus conversation. Your demographic and who it is today, is that actually in alignment with what you believe your demographic should be? So are the people that are coming through the door truly the people that you think are your demographic, or are you a little bit off, right? And let's really get down to brass tacks. Let's start to talk to and engage with, to the panel that was previous, I couldn't agree more, your staff and your associates, understanding what's really happening on that sales floor. Because the more granular that we can get in relation to the demographics, the traffic patterns, to Roberta's point, she shops at 1 p.m. at Rite Aid, it allows us to get even better at what we refer to in my industry with music as day partying, which some of you I'm sure are familiar with, and that's crafting music in a way, putting it together in a way that is centered around time of day, day of week, and also location regionally speaking. A store in the Lower East Side is going to be very different from a store in Williamsburg. And those are real differences. And so, especially working with global brands as well, it's, what's your core sound? We help a brand to figure that out. What is that core sound? And is it 80% of the core sound and then 20% of regional implications? So we want to bring in local content from the community so that a store in Berlin still feels like a store in Berlin. And so those are some of the questions that we ask. And I think one direction back to the question that was just asked that I see the industry going as well is putting control in the power of your managers on the floor, of key holders on the floor, because like a DJ, okay, and having been one for more than a decade, your goal as a DJ, contrary to what some DJs may say, it's about reading the room and really deciphering what's happening, what's the energy, who just walked through the door, and understanding that you're never going to please everyone, but how do you, do your best at pleasing the people that are there. So to that point, we're giving more control and power and technology to those key holders on the floor so they can influence and change not only the tempo of the music from a pre-programmed playlist that fits the day part, but also the volume levels.
When we run into also conflict of the style expert who is there listening to the music all day that wants to hear a certain type of music versus not thinking about what the customers
I can't wait to get out.
reacting to, and so, but yet that again affects the customer experience if the style experts are in a certain mood as well.
Totally.
So.
And you want your staff to be happy. And we call, there's nothing worse than what I call employee fatigue, when they're hearing the same thing, whether it's audio messaging or audio from a piece of video content. Who wants to hear the same promo every 15 seconds on a loop all day long? I mean, you will literally go crazy, right? So I think it's also really important to have those interviews with the team to understand what they're trying, what their day is like, what works for them, what doesn't. But again, it's not their decision at the end of the day, it's the brand's decision. So if you create a core brand sound identity, then you have something defendable that you can always stand behind and say, okay, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, musically speaking.
Yeah, good. We are just, do you have a follow-up on that, Michelle or David?
I have
Very
a follow-up,
quickly?
but I'd rather have another question than talking about.
Well, we're down to that
America.
last 13 seconds, so if we have a quick question, Lyle, otherwise I'm going to
quick
need to
two-part
get us
question.
into break.
So given that we're at the front end of voice activation and voice-based engagement, what insights do you suggest we've got to have in our frontal lobe as we move forward with that? And what's your perspectives about subliminal or unconscious messaging that could trigger emotions and actions?
Okay, now that's a wonderful question. It's long, but I'm going to have David start the answer quickly so that we can get everybody to break as promised.
Seconds or less.
You have less. You got 30, and I'm counting down.
I'll jump to question 2, which is the subliminal one, right? So 95% of the decisions, the things that we think about, we're not actually thinking about. Right? So conscious awareness is only a very small portion of the activity that goes on in your brain, which I think actually is interesting when you look at some of these brain scans that happen. So to that end, I think it is true that you can activate a lot of sort of behavior by going at the subconscious because it's where most of those things are happening. When you get into decision making, that's where you get confusion in the shopping aisle. You're forcing people to take neural resources, and mental energy to try to make a decision. And that sometimes gets really confusing for a lot of people based on a lot of factors, which we don't have time to talk about in 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
But I think it's an interesting idea, but I would suggest that it's not going at the subconscious and having that grumble voice below the soundtrack, which is barely audible, that's saying, buy more eggs, buy more egg. That doesn't work.
All right, Michelle.
No.
Now, Michelle, why don't you
Yeah,
wrap this up?
I'll just wrap
with
it
your
up.
last-
The word we should use is non-conscious. Non-conscious, not subliminal. Subliminal got us in trouble in the 70s, and it actually was a facade. Like it was a fallacy that didn't really actually happen if you go back and watch. So it's non-conscious, and it's exactly what David said. There is more we're learning about the brain because we now have the ability with technology to put these in our own labs. And take them from, this is medical grade, used for concussion research, sleep disorders, ADHD, Alzheimer's, and now use it and apply it in other ways to understand the brain more fully. So this human understanding is bigger than us, and it's going on much bigger than this room and what we're doing in our labs. So stay tuned, so much more to come, and it's relevant to every single one of us because our brains matter. Thank
Good.
you.
So please, a thank you to Tamara Decuba with Image Sound, with Dr. Michelle Adams, Marketing Brainology, and of course with David Kupperman, whom we all know now with Marriott International. A big thank you to the panel and to the start of this. Thank you.